Hello everybody, welcome to the video. Now, today in this video, we are going to learn a famous tragedy written by William Shakespeare, which is Romeo and Juliet. So if you are preparing your exam about it, this video is surely going to help you in some ways. So let's see something about this play. So Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy written by William Shakespeare early in his career about the romance between two Italian youths from footing families. It was among Shakespeare's most popular play during the lifetime and along with Hamlet. So Hamlet is one another tragedy, famous tragedy which was written by William Shakespeare itself. So is one of his frequently performed plays. Now, here's a famous quote by William Shakespeare, taken from Romeo and Juliet itself, from Act 1 and Scene 1. So, love is heavy and light, bright and dark, hot and cold, sick and healthy, asleep and awake. It's everything except what it is. Now, let's check out some characters. So, here's the protagonist character, male protagonist, Romeo, which is the son of Lord and Lady Montague, who falls in love with Juliet, and Juliet is the female protagonist who is a daughter of Lord and Lady Capulet. She falls in love with Romeo. Let's see Romeo's family. So Lady and Lord Montague, who are the heads of Montague family and the parents of Romeo. And Friar Lawrence is a Franciscan monk and a trusted friend of Romeo. Mercutio is another friend of Romeo and relative of Prince Ascalus, and Benvolio is also a friend of Romeo and Mercutio and is also a Lord Montague's nephew. So here we can see that Romeo is having three friends. First is Friar, second is Mercutio and Benvolio. Let's see Juliet's side. So Lady and Lord Capulet are the parents of Juliet, all right, and the nurse works for Capulet family and looked after Juliet since she was a baby. Tybalt is Lady Capulet's nephew and disliked the Montagues. Then we have Paris, who is a nobleman and who wants to marry Juliet. Now, it is very, very important to actually understand the characters of the play in the beginning, because so that you can, connect the story more as it move forward. Okay, now the story is all about the two family which are divided for political supremacy. Now, who are the two families? One is Capulet, another one is Montague. So Capulet is the family of Juliet, and Montague is the family of Romeo, right? So Capulet family is one of pride and high social standing, which are rich merchants. They get along quite well, yet like all families, they have internal differences. And what about Montague? So House of Montague can be seen as less aggressive of two clans. Who are the two clans? One is Montague and another one is your Capulet. Occasionally making efforts to maintain peace, while the Capulets are more often instigators. So both the families are divided, having disputes about the political supremacy between each other. Now let's begin our story. So Act 1, Scene 1. The play opens with two servants from the house of Capulet talking about their hatred of Montagues. They meet two servants from the house of Montague and a fight breaks out. Now Benvolio, who was the friend of Romeo, tries to stop the fight, but when Tybalt arrives, things get worse. Now Tybalt was the nephew of Lady Capulet, who disliked Montague, so that's why things get worse. With his line, "As I hate hell, all Montague and thee have at thee covered," the fight escalates until there is a huge street brawl involving both Lord Montague and Lord Capulet. The fight is eventually stopped when the prince stop everyone, saying, "On pain of torture from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground." He is so angry that he proclaims that the prince proclaims that if there is another fight between Montague and Capulet, so they shall pay the forfeit for it with their lives. Now prince warns here to both the families, to both the Lord Montague and Lord Capulet, that they are not allowed to fight with each other now, otherwise they have to pay forfeit for it with their lives. Now everyone departs, leaving Lord and Lady Montague talking to Benvolio about their son Romeo, who has been missing all day. Benvolio promises to find out where Romeo has been and what's upsetting him. So Romeo reveals to Benvolio that he is in love with Rosaline, but she doesn't love him in return, or she doesn't love him back. Now, what do we learn from Act 1 and Scene 1? That the Montagues and Capulets are rival families who regularly fight with each other. The prince warns Lord Capulet and Lord Montague that if there is another fight, they shall pay for it with their lives. And then we found out that Romeo is in love with Rosaline. All right. Now, Act 1, Scene 2. Paris visited Lord Capulet to ask Juliet's hand in marriage. Lord Capulet thinks Juliet is too young to marry, saying to Paris that let 2 more summers wither in their pride, ere we may think her ripe to be a bride. Now, 2 more summer. What do we understand by 2 more summer? 2 more summers are here, like 2 years. So, Lord Capulet asked Paris to wait for 2 years more, and then she will be ready for get to get married with Paris. Now, however, he later encourages Paris to woo her at the ball at his house, but Lord Capulet sent a messenger to invite other guests to the ball. The messenger bumps into Romeo and Benvolio, revealing to them the ball is taking place and that Rosaline is one of the guests. Now, Benvolio suggests they go to the ball so Romeo can find someone else to fall in love with. But Romeo agrees to go, not to find a new love, but to prove that Rosaline is the prettiest, saying, I will go along, no such sight to be shown, but to rejoice in splendor of my own. Yeah. So in Scene 2, we learn that Paris wants to marry Juliet, but Lord Capulet wants to wait for 2 more years. There is going to be a huge ball at the Capulet house, and Romeo and Benvolio plan to go to the ball even though they are not invited there. Because they wanted to go, Benvolio wanted Romeo to go to find a new love, but Romeo wanted to go to see Rosaline. Okay, now let's see Scene 3. Now, Lady Capulet is searching for her daughter, who is getting ready for the ball. Together with the nurse, she tries to convince Juliet that Paris is a good match in marriage, praising him and saying, Verona's summer hath not such a flower. The nurse talks about the memory she has of Juliet when she was a little girl, saying, Thou wast the prettiest babe that I e'er nursed, and I might have lived to see thee marriage once. I have my wish. And is only keen for Juliet to marry Paris and to be happy. Now, in Scene 3, what do we learn? That Juliet is the only 13-year-old girl. So, Juliet is only 13 years old. The nurse has cared for Juliet since she was a baby and is very affectionate towards her. Whereas Lady Capulet and the nurse both thinks Paris is a good match for Juliet. Alright, now see Act 1 and Scene 4. Romeo, Mercutio, and Benvolio, all 3 friends, are on their way to the ball. Romeo is having second thoughts about attending it because he is feeling depressed about Rosaline, telling the others, I have a soul of lead, so stake me to the ground, I cannot move. He then tells them that he had an ominous dream, and Mercutio tries to convince Romeo that dreams are meaningless, and in his famous Queen Mab speech telling Romeo, true, I talked of dream, which is as thin of substance as air. Eventually, Romeo agrees to go to the ball then. So what do we learn in Scene 4? That Romeo might have had a premonition, which is and doesn't want to go to the ball. So what is premonition? Premonition is basically something unpleasant, the feeling of unpleasant, that unpleasantness feeling that is going to happen in the future. So Romeo was having that and didn't want to go to the ball, but still he agrees to go to the ball when Mercutio convinces him. Then Mercutio thinks that Romeo's dreams are meaningless. All right, Act 1 and Scene 5. So the servants in the Capulet household are getting ready for the ball. Before Capulet welcome all the guests, Tybalt sees Romeo and is offended by his presence at ball, claiming I will not endure him and viewing his presence as an insult. Lord Capulet stops him from confronting Romeo, which makes Tybalt even more angrier, and he vows to seek revenge. Meanwhile, Romeo meets Juliet at the ball and they kiss, with Juliet saying you kiss by the book. They then both find out that who the other is and are separated. because they were not aware till now that who are they. But as the moment they find out that they are from the rival families, they get separated, with Juliet remarking, my only love sprung from my only hate, too early, seen unknown, and known too late. All right, so what do we learn in Act 1, Scene 5? That Lord Capulet allow Romeo's to stay at the ball, showing a much more relaxed attitude to the grudge than his nephew, the Tybalt, who vows to revenge on Romeo. Romeo and Juliet meet and share an instant connection. They align together in the scene from the sonnet, and Romeo and Juliet both learns that who the other one is. Now, things here comes our end of Act 1. So, things we have to notice in Act 1 is, okay, here are some questions. I want you to answer them in your notebook, or if you can answer them, if you can find out the answer only by just reading Act 1, that would be good. So, first is, notice the set of opening scene and conflict between the two households mentioned in the prologue. What could have been the cause of their ancient grudge? So we have already discussed that because of the political supremacy, they were having like fights all over again and again. Now, why do you think Shakespeare include the prologue, and which character feel more strong about the feud? So it was Tybalt. As for me, it was Tybalt, because he was most strong. He was the most strongly, like, he was the most strong person who didn't like Montague family, who dislikes the Montague family. Now look out for the reference to fate and premonition in the opening scenes. In scene 4, Romeo says, for my mind misgives some consequences yet hanging in the stars of untimely death. What has Romeo dreamt about, and why do you think Shakespeare has given Romeo these lines? And take a note of Tybalt's reaction or to seeing Romeo at the ball. He seems more offended by Romeo's being there than Lord Capulet. Why this might be? Can you answer this? And what does this tells us about Tybalt's character? What does it tells about the more younger generation in the play? Now in Act 1, it is important because it sets up the characters revealing their allegiances, and Romeo and Juliet also have a private first meeting in the public space. What kind of language do Romeo and Juliet use when they meet, and what are your impressions of Romeo and his attitude towards love? Can you tell that? And what do we discover about who is on which side in feud? So these are few questions that we can find out from Act 1. I want you to answer them and find out the answers, so that you can have a clear picture of Act 1, so that we can move forward to Act 2. So, for this video, this will be it, and we'll surely continue our Romeo and Juliet story in from Act 2 in the next video. So, thank you so much for being here, and we shall see you in the next video. Bye bye.